So what is on the menu tonight?
Mystery.
It's not a mystery to me. So, as a lot of you know, I'm in recovery. I'm a recovering addict, and as well as doing the Buddhist recovery path, I'm also a member of a 12-step program. So I've been going over doing some step work, and I'm working on step 6 lately. For those of you that are unfamiliar with the 12 steps, step 6 is listing and expounding on your defects of character. It's really this deep investigation of some of your less savory traits, right? And it really brings a lot of awareness to those traits. Like because we can sit and we can talk about them, we can list them, but when you really start investigating them, it really sheds a whole new light on some of these less than savory actions. And invariably the mind starts creating stories around, some particular facets about aspects of my personality that come out that are less, probably I would call unskillful. I think that's the best way I would describe it, is an unskillful way to interact with the world. As I dig into this step and really get into it, like you said, the mind starts kind of going into revolt and telling me all these stories about what a terrible person I am, or all these things that I've done, all these unskillful things that I've done in my past, these unskillful aspects of my character. I'm a bad Buddhist. The mind loves to tell a good story. And it does it with all kinds of things. It doesn't just have to be step work. Have any of you ever been in this situation, like you call someone and they don't answer, and then your mind immediately goes to like, oh God, did I do something wrong? What have I done? Why aren't they answering? What could it possibly be? Am I not good enough? Is there something wrong with me? I just don't fit in. They're not answering because I don't fit in. They don't like me. God, they don't like me. Yeah, we've all been there, right? Even writing this talk, I had some of those thoughts, like, is this really the talk I want to write? Am I qualified to do that? Even just doing what I do, even teaching this class every Monday, like, am I really cut out for this? All these doubts that arise in the mind, this self-doubt. Not good enough. It's a big story for me. It's one of my mind's biggest stories. Not good enough. Not a part of things. I don't fit in. I'm somehow different than everyone else. But these are thoughts. These are just thoughts. They're not necessarily reality. Because I do fit in. And I am good enough. Just like all of you are. You're all just perfect the way you are. We might have some unsavory aspects of our character that need attention, but that's what mindfulness gives us. It gives us this window to these aspects of our personality. We can really hone in on these less than skillful aspects of ourselves. And the first step of that is just, like I said, knowing a thought is a thought. Menindraji was one of Joseph Goldstein's first teachers, and it's got this really good quote. He said, "A thought of your mother is not your mother," right? It's a thought. So with mindfulness, the object of meditation and mindfulness isn't to stop our thoughts. It's to see them as they are, to see the reality of things as they truly are. It reminds me of the story of the Buddha's awakening, when he sat under the Bodhi tree. The Buddha grew up, he was pretty much like a trust fund kid, right? He was a spoiled prince. He grew up in lavish luxury and found that empty. So, he set about this spiritual path and became an ascetic, which is like the opposite end of the spectrum, eating a grain of rice a day, not wearing clothes, doing some pretty insane stuff to his body, this kind of self-flagellation. And none of that didn't work either, so all the riches didn't make him happy. Getting rid of all that didn't make him happy. So he set out to figure out what did work. And he sat under the Bodhi tree. They say he sat there for 7 weeks, working to attain this enlightenment, this awakening. But not without some trouble, right? Because guess who shows up? Mara shows up. The snarling demon Mara, trying to thwart the Buddha away from his awakening. And, he threw everything he had at him. The first thing he threw at him was craving, in the form of Mara's daughters, who appeared as like sexy ladies trying to tempt the Buddha. He said, no, I see you, Mara. I see you. When that didn't work, he shot arrows down at the Buddha. They turned into flowers. I see you, Mara. I see you. When that didn't work, the last thing he did was try to appeal to the Buddha's insecurities, his sense of self-doubt. What are you doing? Why are you even trying? This meditation thing doesn't work. What are you doing right now? Who do you think you are? Even if you did achieve this, nobody's going to see it. Nobody's going to know. So the Buddha took his hand and he placed it on the ground. He said, the earth will be my witness. Anyway. So with the sense of investigation, we can see these hindrances. We can see the craving, we can see the aversion, we can see the restlessness and the doubt and the worry. And by investigating, what does each moment have to teach me? With mindfulness, each moment becomes a teacher. What does it have to teach me right now? What is my experience in this moment? Which way does the mind wander? For me, most of the time, my mind wanders towards craving and aversion. I think that's most people. We want to have a pleasant experience and we don't want to have a painful experience. It's perfectly human, perfectly natural, perfectly normal. It's just what we as humans do. We seek out pleasure and we push away from pain. I crave things, like especially doing this step work stuff. It's like I crave things to be different than they are. Like I want to be different. Like I don't want these to be aspects of my personality. I don't want to feel that way about myself. Not wanting things to be this way or wanting them to be that way. Wanting this, not wanting that. But again, with mindfulness, we can see it. And once we see it, it ceases to become a hindrance. Because then we have some agency. We can actually work on these things. Once we see the tendency of the mind to get lost, we can work with it. Whatever's in the way is the way. So what was once a hindrance now becomes our practice. We can bring mindfulness to these actions, these unskillful actions. We can bring this sense of mindfulness and say, oh, don't do that. It's not good. It's not healthy. It's not going to turn out well for you. So we wake up to the present moment. And so what are we waking up to? A lot of the time, we find that we're waking up to our sadness, our anger, our frustration, just our longing for things to be different than they are. But seeing it does give us agency. By seeing it, we can work with it. One of my teachers, Andrew Chapman, has this really good quote. And he says, it might not be good news, but it's good information. Right? So we wake up to these mental states and these emotions, and we find what's been there all along. Under these discursive mental states, and underneath the craving and the clinging and the wanting for things to be different than they are, we wake up to a loving heart that's been buried by our conditioning. The world is a cruel place. And if we let it, it'll kick our ass, for sure. It's kicked mine a lot. We're conditioned by our circumstance. Things that are out of our control have made us the people that we are. It's like that kind of cliche that like, your trauma's not your fault, but it's your responsibility. There's only two things exist. That which is loved and that which is longing for love. Everything else is just a byproduct of those states. So all of those defects of character are just the heart's longing for love and badly formed coping mechanisms that were created when we didn't receive that love. So when I go through this sixth step, when I go through these defects of character, quote unquote, these poor coping strategies, the mind starts to turn against me. Mara shows up. And a lot of that is just, looking for things externally to make me feel better. But as I've said a million times in this room, if our happiness is dependent on conditioned things, and conditioned things are impermanent, what does that say about our sense of happiness? It's also impermanent. So externally doesn't work. We have to go inward. We have to love ourselves the way that we have always wanted to be loved. We have to love ourselves. We have to offer ourselves this love that we so freely give to others, that we hold back from ourselves. I think some of you may have heard me talk about the Metta Sutta. The Metta Sutta is basically the Buddha's discourse on loving kindness. And he gave this discourse. So in the time of the Buddha, they would go on retreat during the rainy season so that they wouldn't trample the crops. So the monks and the nuns would all retreat to the woods, and they would meditate for 3 months, basically. It was like a 90-day retreat, which sounds fun, right? Any of you that have sat retreat know that 90 days it's a little excessive. But so this particular time, they went to like the woods, the base of the Himalayas, and they're meditating. And what happens is these tree devas, these tree ghosts, start kind of screwing with all the meditators, all the monks and the nuns. And they start tearing at their clothing. They start, scratching them, scaring the shit out of them. Basically, is what they're doing. And they go back to the Buddha and they're like, hey man, this isn't going to work for me. Like, I can't meditate in there. There's these ghosts in there. I don't know if you knew about this, but there's ghosts in those woods, and they're like fucking with me really hardcore right now. And we're having a really hard time with this. He said, what I want you to do is I want you to go back and I want you to practice this quality of metta. This quality of loving kindness. I want you to accept things as they are and offer loving kindness to these tree spirits. So that's what they did. They went back into the woods and they practiced metta. And the ghosts stopped screwing with them. In fact, not only did they stop screwing with them, but they started giving them shelter and providing them with food so they could focus on their practice. So layer by layer, we excavate the heart from its conditioning. Any religion only teaches love. At its core, every religion teaches love. Because that's what we are. At our core, we are nothing but love. So as a mother would protect with her life, her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all beings. So we're unearthing this heart, layer by layer. This heart that's full of love, a heart that's full of metta. We're being kind to ourselves. We're being kind to others. We're being gentle with our experience. In the 5th verse of the Dhammapada, it says that hatred is not appeased by hatred. By love alone is hatred appeased. That's been my experience. As I said, I'm in recovery, and early in my recovery, I thought that I could hate myself better. I don't know if any of you have ever tried that. If you haven't, I don't recommend it, and I've already done the groundwork on it. It doesn't work. So I'll save you a lot of trouble. It doesn't work.
Oh, you're good at that, but...
By love alone is hatred to peace. So just know that any defects of character that you may think you have or that you may have are just a result of your conditioning. It's a result of a heart that didn't receive the love that it needed in the time that it needed it. So that being said, I'd like to move into a little bit longer guided practice now. So if everybody wants to, again, find a position that is upright and supportive, allow you to sit comfortably for the next 30 minutes. What we're going to do is we're going to do a metta practice. So again, just taking a few intentional deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. Just finding ourselves in this space, arriving into the space. Allowing the eyes to gently close or find a soft gaze at the floor in front of you. And again, the meditation will begin and end with the bell.